Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Born Podcast, brought to you from our studio here in central Pennsylvania. I'm your host, Nathan Imboden, and on this show, we have the privilege of championing the message of entrepreneurship and business ownership by interviewing incredible business owners and leaders right here in our backyard in central Pennsylvania. You can find a full replay of our podcast on our website at www.thebornpodcast.com. Also, go to any one of our social media channels or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Search for The Born Podcast and hit that follow button so you can stay up to date on all of our episodes. And today, I don't say legends too often, but I think we have a couple legends that are in the studio with us today. I'm going to do a little sneak. I've been working on the one to my far right for a while. He shut me down, but I persevere, so I keep coming after him, Mr. Barry Kindt. And then we have Mr. Anthony Worrall, who is right now, you can see the shirt, current owner of SECCO. Barry was the former owner of SECCO. We're going to get into a little bit of that and some other stuff. But, gentlemen, thanks for joining the show. Appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. Thank you for the invite.
Yeah. Why don't we start with just a little background for those who aren't familiar with Barry and the Jets or the Pronto trucks driving around or any of that. Why don't you give people a little background on Barry?
In 2006, actually, we started Pronto just to make sure everyone knew and understood exactly what Pronto is and what Pronto does and how we do it. And it's all about speed to taking care of a customer and doing a white shirt service kind of job for a customer. So it was born from SECCO Home Services, which really didn't tell a lot of people much about what we do or what the expectations were. So hence a name change, and marketing is one of my favorite things. So it was fun doing that.
I could see that. So you had SECCO Home Services, branched out two essentially divisions, and from there you had Pronto and then the electric division?
Actually, SECCO Electric is the oldest component of the businesses that Herm Sebastian started in 1969. So we kind of all owe it all to Herm, who was an entrepreneur and had the typical entrepreneurial seizure, like Michael Gerber says, loved doing the trade, but didn't like doing the business. So, hence he hires me to be in the office to start running the show and doing the estimating and project managing and that kind of thing. So years later, we split SECCO Home Services off from SECCO just to have a residential component, because the difference between commercial and residential is huge, and it's really unfair to have a commercial service technician adapt to working in someone's home. It's totally different than construction, and took it very seriously. So we started branding SECCO Home Services, while at the same time SECCO Electric is in operation and doing well.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Anthony, how about a little of your background? And I know you, in your intake, you talked about how long you've been at Reynolds, and then there's some changes that happened in there as well over the years. But how about a little bit of your background?
So, sure, thank you. So I started been at Reynolds been in 1999, and that organization had started, Rick Reynolds started that in 1994. And at the time we had two different divisions there. We had a construction management and a general construction division. While I was there, in the first 4 years, we started 3 other divisions. And then a couple years later, we started 2 more. So through 2007, we had a total of 7 divisions of different, operating entities that we had, that all were around some sort of construction service. Whether it was facilities management, whether it was general construction, construction management, energy, building commissioning, MEP design, and then restoration services. So lots of different, services all around there. So we had grown it. In 2013, myself and 2 other partners purchased all of the divisions from Rick Reynolds. He had, reached a point that, he was ready to move on. So myself and 2 other partners, had a lot of fun. and grew the business. And we got to a point in 2018 that we ended up selling to a private equity. And we enjoyed the private equity that we had sold to. And come COVID, right before COVID, that private equity sold to another private equity. So that kind of gave us a little bit of a trigger point, where my one partner, who was, we all still worked there, he ended up retiring. I kind of made a play and said, I'd like to buy this one division away from them, because it wasn't their core focus.
Okay.
Because they had a platform across the country which was focused around energy and construction. So the restoration division, while it was doing well, it just wasn't their focus around the country. So in October of 2020, I ended up purchasing that away from the private equity.
Okay.
So, and then a couple months later, myself and two other partners, we started a IT MSP company, Everround. So, and that has been, part of the we'll say advantage, to being able to grow and then acquire new businesses, because there's so much and that revolves around the IT space.
Yeah.
With the restoration business, very technology driven, and then any thought of a new acquisition, there's lots of integration with that. So it has made that part pretty easy. But we're a local provider on the MSP side. Then had kind of really grown and run the restoration side. We had grown and run the Everround side, and I was just looking for another business that was locally owned, had a local presence, really good quality. And Barry and I had been talking, we'll just say, for a while. We have a couple of, one very good mutual friend, and he knew that I was looking, and I had kind of dabbled in a few other businesses, I kind of poked around, and then he put us together, and it took us a little time to really figure it out of what it looked like, and kind of align, really get to what I saw, and then what he saw as the most important things, which and it isn't just about the money, and it's about the employees and the customers, and really what that looks like.
Yeah.
All the rest of it will take care of itself if those couple things align.
Yeah, for sure. When you have a unique perspective on your end, in particular on the private equity side, because you've been on both sides of it.
Yes.
So I'm curious what the experience was like, really both sides. On one hand, you're a benefactor of the, you're hearing a lot about the big money and the checks that are coming out to buy people out. But then you were on the other side of it, figuring out, all right, well, how do I claw something back, so to speak, from them? What was that process like?
So that was very unique. When we had the ability to pick who we were going to sell to, much like Barry did. We picked and we interviewed, and we ended up going with a group of people as a private equity, and we really were aligned there. The new private equity vendor then purchased that. We didn't see eye to eye. It really wasn't. They had a different focus. They had a different mentality, and it was in my mind, it was a very short-term focus. And that really didn't, I didn't see that myself and certain employees and then certain customers, were really going to, benefit from that. And so, that's when it is a pretty interesting, then negotiating with a private equity to buy something from them.
Yeah.
I
can only imagine.
I can only imagine.
We'll just say that I had certain things that were an advantage, because I was an integral part of the restoration piece. So, there was more value with myself and a few employees being there in the business. And if the acquisition by myself wasn't successful, we were going to leave.
Yeah.
And therefore, what was the value of that asset afterward?
Yeah.
Can never say take it or leave it, or hey,
Sure.
or threaten,
Yeah.
because they're that really doesn't go well. But they understood that, and we came to a fair deal, and kind of the rest is history with that. So I have the only Reynolds company left in the area. The private equity then changed the name of the rest of the Reynolds companies.
Okay.
So
What are they now?
Site Logic.
Okay.
Is the
All
name of the company.
Got it.
So, I think.
Well, and you kind of had an advantage because you have a pretty heavy duty financial background. Plus, you knew how all the pieces
Right.
went together.
Right.
Correct. So, I was for 15 years. I was the CFO of all of the Reynolds companies.
Right.
The reason why the SECCO one was so interesting. I've done lots of M&A, but this was the first one that was totally foreign to me. Every M&A, either buying or selling, I had a hand in running.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
I knew every part about it.
Right.
There wasn't an unknown. So this was a little unique from a standpoint that, I didn't know everything about it.
Mm-hmm.
The due diligence period and afterward, it was, it was really getting an understanding of it.
Sure. Yeah. All right. You still have a few businesses, or at least
Just
two. But
Who's counting?
yeah, exactly.
Well, it's only because my wife won't let me have any more businesses.
I was going to say that.
Yeah.
It's the truth.
It is. Yeah. What I would assume, was there a discussion when you guys were talking about all of the businesses, or was it really just aligned with the SECCO side because of synergies maybe with other businesses, the Reynolds side that you had were?
So far as I know, it was just about the electrical side. And the first answer or question out of my mouth was, really? You want to be an electrician? No, I don't want to be an electrician. I want to have an electrical construction business that runs really well.
Sure.
And we have the components that Anthony cares about and that I've cared about all along is longevity of employees and certifications. We have 17 master electricians on our staff of 42, which is unheard of in the country. I don't know of anyone who has that kind of staff. And my staff is, his staff now. It's hard. It is difficult, I'm telling you. But we have 32 years as his general manager.
Yeah.
And it means a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm an introvert, so I don't have the background that he has. I've been an electrician. These hands were scarred, cut up a lot doing electrical work and heating and air conditioning work and commercial refrigeration work, and kind of got pushed into running the business, which was a total change. I had a bit of the entrepreneurial spirit as well, and or the E-Myth.
Well, you were the sort of practitioner that became the owner, or sort of transferred into the owner. There's probably a little bit of that in you always. I mean, it's hard to.
Oh yeah,
it's hard to create that mindset.
I get in their way all the time. I mean, it's. Do you guys need help with that job? No. Why don't you stay in the office? That's usually the comment. But yeah, it is. It's fun. It still piques my interest to learn about all the new things and new products and anything that can help the technicians avoid what I call brain damage, and that is doing things that is either repetitive. How can we make it easier? How can we make it faster? We're one of very few companies in the country who have a prefab shop to prep and test everything that goes out in the field so that we don't wind up with callbacks or more service or inconveniencing the customer as kind of like number one.
Yeah.
And none of the techs ever like to do something over. So doing it right the first time has always been our model. So yeah, It's still there. It comes out every once in a while, and I get involved in things that I probably shouldn't, and they'll tell you that.
Yeah. It is when you've been doing something for so long, it's hard to just walk away from it. I could completely imagine. With that, so we'll get into some of the aspects of the deal itself, the transition. I'll go maybe sort of bigger picture first, and then come back.
I'll try to stay with you.
Yeah, please do. If I get ahead of you, just tell me. I can dial it back. What were you looking for in a potential buyer? Because, and you didn't build this as a flip necessarily. I mean, you likely always had some sort of an exit in mind, thinking most people don't start a business without thinking about an exit. But this has been a long time. You have a lot of time into it. You've got a lot of energy. You've got a lot of your fingerprints on this. So imagine you had some specific things you were looking. Yeah,
it goes real fast, and really, we did not go out to the market. So, and a lot of my peers on our residential service side do that. And typically, the first thing they say is, I regret that I did it. And as soon as I'm out of my conflict of interest or my agreement with that company, I'm starting up again.
Yeah.
And they just don't feel that whoever takes them over has the right culture or the right caring for people.
Sure.
Knowing Anthony for 22 and a half, almost 23 years now, I knew his attitude and I knew what was in his heart.
Yeah.
And that was really the differentiator for me. I didn't need to exit. I wasn't really looking at exiting. And that's why the question, really? You really want to do this? Remember, we're a subcontractor. We work for other people. We don't necessarily always work directly for the owner, which is a little bit more challenging.
Sure.
And he said, hey, I know that industry. I was one.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
I know how it all works. So it was easy. I know his wife, and we have a very, very close mutual friend, Greg Gunn, and it fit.
Yeah.
It was a good fit. And as Anthony said, it wasn't about the money, although there could have been more. Would have been nice.
I don't know what you're talking about. I have to go back to work after this to pay for it. I don't know.
But really, taking care of the people and keeping that whole thing growing. We have lost in, let's see, November, December, January, February. I might run out of fingers. March.
I'll start counting.
It's almost 5 months now, and we've lost 0 people.
That's great.
And that's like my number one thing.
Yeah.
We've lost 0 people, and we have an opportunity to grow. Anthony's connected in so many different circles than I am. I'm the guy behind the curtain, always was, and that's my thing.
Yeah.
So it's a great fit. It just is a great fit.
I mean, I could go in. I think we have a really good story to tell. With that, but as SECCO, as an commercial electrical contractor, as a service, I just think that there's some pent up demand out there. Are we looking to grow and double in size in 12 months or something? Absolutely not.
Yeah.
The level of quality and the from the employee in the office to what we do in the field, that all needs to stay, and it needs to be there as we grow. So some controlled growth with that, but being able to take what Barry has built and be able to perpetuate that for the employees and the customers, that's the biggest part. And we both, and the cool part, we both think, Ben, that we have a lot of pressure on each other. Barry has the pressure that he thinks that he has to make sure that what he sold me is exactly what he told me.
Mm-hmm.
I think I have to deliver on, I have to keep it going and to be able to perpetuate, what he had, and to make it, and to not it not change into a lower quality or viewed as a leader in the market. So, I think we both think that we have pressure on
Yeah.
ourselves. So it's a pretty interesting part.
Yeah.
But and here we are 5 months after signing the deal, and we still talk a couple times a week. I see him around the office.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Was an electrical contracting business on your radar?
Not at all.
Okay, so how did this opportunity?
So I was looking at other opportunities. So I had, I have a back of office. So we have a couple operating companies, and we have a back of office. So I can go and we can find a company that has a really good, product and some people, and I can purchase that, and the integration on the back office side won't be as big of a lift there with that. I am, have, for all intents and purposes, started a small family office of, having not synergy, companies, but, in the same geographic territory, generally about the same size. And, they serve similar markets, but they have different drivers of for their work. So I don't want and not that being vertically integrated can't be good.
Sure.
But if that market has a downturn, guess what? All of your companies or all of your eggs have a downturn. So each of the companies that I have now have different drivers of the ups and downs of the market. So that's an important diversifying that, but also having some synergy, and the synergy really is the shared services that we're able to have on the backside.
Yeah.
So that part, could there be more in the future? Absolutely. But but it won't be at a fast pace.
Sure. So as a brand new business, then you said this is one of the first ones that was really foreign to you.
Correct.
How do you go about going into that, doing your due diligence to evaluate, is this something? You got a strong financial background, so some of it is just dollars and cents, to boil it down. But you also are learning something, an industry. You're sort of tied to it, but it's completely different, right?
Completely different.
So what's your process like going into that, trying to figure out, is this a business I do want to invest in and bring in to be a part of this?
Really good question. So even before we got to, letter of intent and, going through we'll say the financial due diligence, Barry and I talked a lot, probably more, and had more meetings and more, just about, what the company was like and how they really, had evolved, and, what their process was, what their value add was. We really talked through a lot of that. We went through a lot of the financial side, but we really talked about, what was his driver, what did he do as a part of it? Because we were, over time, he was going to be extracted out. So what did, myself and or someone else, what shoes did we have to fill? With that, and then going through the leadership positions in the company, which, as Barry said, they are filled with very long tenured people in the company. What did each one of them do, and what were their strengths and weaknesses, and what were some of their aspirations going forward? Because there are some that may be closer to retirement, or some that are looking for advancement, or looking for something new in the future. And being acquired or being, purchased, can be pretty scary from an employee standpoint. And as Barry said, we haven't, lost a single employee. That was a big part going in. How are we going to make it as easy on the employee side with this transition? Yes, how are we going to make it all on the customer side? That that there was basically no disruption, and they really didn't feel it. But
Sure.
The first part is the employee, because we are a service business. We aren't producing widgets. We have employees that are performing the service. So we have to start with the employee. If they are if they feel that this is good for them and, that there's a positive future, then our customers are going to be taken care of.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And part of it, when on the employee side, always is about benefits, right? And what's going to happen with my health insurance? What's going to happen with 401k? So we were pretty much lining all those things up, and we're both close with Greg Gunn, and his staff jumped in to try to make sure that everything fit seamlessly together, and all those questions were answered as much ahead of time as we possibly could get them. So we were kind of prepared for most of the questions. There were a couple of questions that were a little off the wall, but if your heart's in the right place and you're honest with them, that's all they need. That's really all they need. Yeah. So, they need to trust that, and not just handing somebody off. It's I care about him, I care about them, and I'm there every day. I see them in the morning at 5:30, and I see them at night at 5:30, 6 p.m., something like that. So it's very transparent. And when you say, I almost feel guilty when you say that I built a company. I really didn't. I picked some really good people who built a company and just gave them a bit of direction, and probably pushed them with some visionary things that they choked on for a while. It's like, oh, he wants us to do that now? Are you kidding me? Yeah. And nope, we're going to Cincinnati and we're going to learn how to do prefab the right way. And it's just push, and then bam, it takes a hold. So it's all about having the right heart, right place, and the trust factor. So, as a doctor would say, first thing is do no harm. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. You guys knowing each other ahead of time has to also present some challenges in this, because there's a little bit of a relationship there. Sometimes it's a little easier, in your case where you had private equity group number 2 coming in, could care less about them. This is purely, I'll go guns a-blazing if I need to and do whatever I need to. Probably a little more challenging to do that when there's a personal relationship involved there, and if you guys spend as much time talking about things before the deal was done. How'd you navigate that? And I'm guessing, I've already heard that there could have been more money, so there's maybe a little pain on one side, but how do you
get hung up on that?
Man. But how do you navigate that well? Because typically a deal is a successful deal when both sides feel a little bit of pain, or give a little bit where, if you're getting absolute top dollar and you're feeling hosed and whatnot, then you're always coming out of it from a bet. But if there's some give on both sides, typically works better. So how did that work for you guys? How'd you figure that out?
Well, first of all, I'd qualify to say,
I can't wait to hear this.
Yeah,
I don't even know what he's going to say.
I like it.
He's a 76er fan.
Oh,
I'm a
God.
Celtic fan.
Okay. Here we go.
Okay.
We can
We're
get
talking
along,
about Eagles and Patriots?
and I'm a Patriots fan.
Okay, there we go.
So if we can get along through that and not kill each other,
that's fair.
A lot of times, then I think we can pretty much deal with anything else.
Yeah.
And having known him for as long as I knew, he already has a background in construction management, understands project management, understands the financials. The rest of it's pretty much easy because of the rest of the staff. I mean, we're just prime. Mm-hmm. We're just prime. So I think it was pretty easy. I think we had our moments. We had a moment where it was, okay, get M&A people out of this and let's just get this done, or not.
Yeah.
And so you remember those moments?
I do. So there's, and I had gone through the process, once you have your letter of intent and, then you step through, your due diligence phase. You've done some due diligence, pre-letter of intent, pre-LOI. But really that after phase is really when due diligence kicks in. And you hire the right consultants, the right attorney, the right CPA to do, certain due diligence, and Barry has his on his side, and you kind of let them do their job.
Sure.
And when they come, we would have weekly meetings, and when they come with something that's a little off the wall, that's when the friendship of Barry and I can really just say, well, we're going to handle it this way, and we're not going to let this, derail part of it, because they have, each of the consultants, are have a job to do, but then are aligned to the person that hired them.
Exactly.
They're trying to fight for them. And, we have to be the ones that are, kind of, looking at the deal to keep moving it forward and to do the right thing by both of us.
Sure.
And, we had a moment here or there, but, you're always going to have a little bit. I mean,
yeah, I think I was very lucky. Miramoti helped on our side.
Okay.
And just about every paragraph that she read was, it needs to be fair. It just all needs to be fair. And she said that so many times that I was convinced that if I did anything, I would want her, because it was about fairness.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it, I knew Anthony was the right person for the company, and he would take it to a whole new level. And I owe it to those folks to provide the best they can have, the best future they can have.
Yeah.
So it's easy. Relative.
Now look about
easy.
it.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost like the Celtics coming back from a 27-point deficit and winning in the last couple of minutes.
Earlier this year, that was great.
Yeah.
Could you imagine anything better?
I can't. I'm having a hard time imagining anything better.
They play again tonight, by the way. It's not going to be pretty.
All right. I know we're not going to talk numbers.
Yeah.
I'm curious, though. Usually, that's one of the biggest hangups, because buyer has one idea of a price, seller has another, and oftentimes there's a pretty big, or a gap in between there.
Yep.
Generally speaking, how close were you guys from the beginning on something? Was it pretty far off when you came in? Was it?
We had talked about it a bunch when it was basically just Barry and I.
Okay.
And his CFO.
Okay. Yep.
The three of us had really talked through it a bunch before we got any consultants went involved.
Yeah.
And had kind of come to the agreement on the real drivers of the deal. And then really didn't bring consultants in until we had to, we'll say, finalize the letter of intent, which really outlines on a lot of the minute parts of the deal. So that part, and like Barry said, it was about the employees and the customers and the perpetuation of the company, and him staying involved for a period of time, and those types of things were important to me and were important to him. And that was, more important than, what is this big number of here? What are we starting with?
Yeah.
And that was important for me, because as I go and talk to, entrepreneurs and business owners that have grown their business and are looking to exit, they have options. They can sell to private equity, depending on their market and their segment. It can either be a really hot market, the private equity, or, not as much. They can sell to an employee or a group of employees, or, they can sell to a competitor. There are some other in between, but those are really the, kind of the three. I want to offer something that's a little bit different. A local business owner that has a track record for being able to, run and perpetuate, a company's success. Not going to change the name, which sometimes, owners are really, like to see that, move forward, and then be there. But then really, grow and invest in the employee side. So, that can be different than the private equity model. That can be a little, in today's world, and with valuations, and with the difficulty in getting financing, the employees struggle to be able to get there.
Yeah.
And then it's a little difficult sometimes for a business owner to hold paper and to, self-finance it. That can, then that can be a challenge. And then a group of employees could struggle with, well, how do I run the company then? So, this was a different way to do it, and I'm really happy, Ren, that we got there.
Yeah.
So
Good.
I have it pretty easy. So, I don't have all the overhead items and that kind of thing. Those all fell on Anthony. So now I actually
where
They're coming down.
I
going down?
actually get to enjoy the people more, I think, and the jobs that we're doing, the technical part of it.
Yeah.
And I can do a little bit more of that. So that kind of makes me happy.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It's a good fit. It's a real good fit.
It's an interesting talk offline about that, because that concept, I think, is really I don't know if there's other people that you know of in the area trying to do the same thing you're doing, but I think that's really needed longer term to preserve some of the real value that organizations like even Reynolds and what you built through SECCO and Pronto for communities specifically. I think there's a lot of merit there. So kudos to you for going down that path.
I so much enjoy, and I have, in my kind of restoration business, I have offices in Philadelphia and Baltimore, and I spend time there, but I really love Central Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Have been here and, really enjoyed that, know a lot of the people, so having, yet another business in this area, to be able to work with a lot of the other business owners that are here.
Yeah.
I really enjoy that.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, looking back on the process and what you did, what do you think was the most important thing that you needed to do? I think in your questionnaires up front, you talk about having a good team around you to guide and facilitate that process. Who do you think were the right members of that team to give you the guidance, each of you, that you needed to determine, am I selling to the right person and at the right, with the right structure in place, and for you on the buying side, am I buying this the way that I should be?
Well, I think in my case, it was extremely important to stay focused on the business and what's going on. So hence, you really should have someone who is a CFO, even if it's fractional, as I have. John Laurie was instrumental in pulling all the information, and it sounds very simple to get that information, but it's constantly being updated because no one closes the same time that LOI shows up.
Yep.
So it's constantly moving, and construction's a moving target. So as is service or anything else. So it's keeping it updated and making sure that we've vetted all the numbers and they are correct, and there isn't something in there that's duplicated or whatever. So financials, it's a huge thing to get through the quality of earnings.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course legal. As I said, Mira Modi constantly said, we have to be fair. Everything has to be fair. So I think those are probably, and then of course, your people have to keep the work and keep the jobs going.
Yeah.
And that's the hardest part for someone selling.
Yeah.
Is not being able to share that now while all this is going on. It could be 90 days, 120 days, or whatever.
Yep.
It's tough not to be totally open and transparent with them. But really, it's for their good.
Sure.
So,
do you feel like you're living a lie? I mean, I walked through that for.
I'd rather.
Offline, I'll share some of my. You know a little bit about my story.
Sure,
but
I'd rather call it imposter syndrome.
Yeah,
but
I would. I'd love to call it whatever I want to, but you do feel like you're living a lie, walking around holding this back, which really
absolutely
could have a significant impact on them, depending on how things go.
I think if you really care about them, you're doing the right thing. They really are.
Yeah.
Because they really don't need to worry about that stuff.
Right.
What they have to do is trust. And I think that's probably the number one thing for internal people.
Yeah.
Trust.
Yeah. All right. What about you, Anthony?
So on my side, I think I identified it early what the biggest challenge was going to be. But even though I identified that as the biggest challenge, I still underestimated a little bit the size of that challenge. And that was, so Barry, like he said, he still has two companies, so he had three companies. He had an organizational structure set up around three companies. I was only buying one of those. So we were extracting,
Yeah.
40 some employees,
Mm-hmm.
and part of the operation, we'll say about 50% of the operation out of his structure. And there are a lot of, we'll just say, unique challenges when they come with that. Whether, but and the nice part was the client facing operational part had, was going to have zero effect.
Sure.
It was all the back of house.
Yeah.
Now, part of it, I said, well, I know all of that. I can make that happen. Well, in typical entrepreneurial fashion, it doesn't exactly go like that.
It doesn't?
It doesn't.
Oh, my goodness.
I had a magic wand and it broke, during some of that. But, so I knew that was going to be a challenge. And, I identified that, and there were still some challenging times, post transaction. And there was still the unknown. There was always the unknown. You really can't talk to a lot. I was only able to talk to the general manager about 3 weeks or so, but before the transaction, and I absolutely understood, but would have loved to have been able to talk to some of the other, senior people. But part of it was, that I had to trust in Barry and some of that. That is definitely been a challenge. The other part of it is really just keeping the momentum. After the LOI, there's lots of, hey, yes, we got an LOI, great, and we're going to close here at this date, way out there. It feels like it's way out there. And then as you're starting to go through your due diligence, and you're having, weekly or biweekly meetings and kind of checking off the list of things to do, there definitely comes a point, and this is where some of the experience and some of the other deals, you get deal fatigue.
Yeah.
It is absolutely a thing. And, you get to a point, you kind of come down to the end and you have, a list of, items that we have to get resolved. Some are legal, some are financial, some are just other, banking ones. And, that deal fatigue, having a friendship really helped because, some people, a deal can fall apart at any time.
Yeah.
Even ones that get the LOI or get pretty close, it can fall apart.
Yeah.
And, not that we were at the point of falling apart, but there are definitely some times where you're like, man, are we going to get there? Like, when is this thing going to happen?
Yeah.
So there was, but, being friends, and having a relationship and a common goal, and, the common goal was the employee and the customer in that order.
Yeah, that's good. What about the team around you? Who were the important members that you needed to bring along to do this well?
So, I did have, ran a good advisor from Murphy McCormick. That was, very, very helpful, went on that side, and then, having, the right attorney.
You had Elton John, I think.
I had Drake Nicholas, and from Barley Snyder, very, very well known in the area. As from
yellow
from
glasses.
He did have yellow glasses, which Barry loved.
Kept the humor level up.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
Very, very loved. But again, it's the right team there, and being able to tell them beforehand, this is the focus.
Mm-hmm.
We're not trying to win every negotiation.
Yeah.
We're trying. Here's the end goal.
Mm-hmm.
And really setting their sights on this is the end goal. And verbalizing that, like we're looking to get here. We're not looking to win every little skirmish or every little back and forth of on the legal side or the financial side.
Yeah.
We want to get here because after the fact we're going to be working together.
Mm-hmm.
Because Barry should, and like Barry says, he sees everyone. He's still in the building. I'm there a couple times a week. With that, so it has to be a good marriage, after the fact and for the go forward.
Yeah, I have life-size cardboard cutouts of me throughout the building, so everyone remembers.
You think he's kidding?
I know he's not. Whenever you retire those, I need to get one in my house. That's
got it.
Do you
got it.
Promise me that?
And he could light it.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Kindling.
Yeah, we'll have a party.
Kindling,
Yeah,
yes.
that'd be good. Awesome.
I think our biggest issue was one day, two people came into my office and like this, And it was, now what? One from Pronto, one from SECCO Electric. And it was, all right, who owns the forklift? I went, I own the forklift. Okay. And off they went. So
Wow. How'd you manage that?
I did sweat a couple of beats, you know. I thought, oh no.
Oh, what's happening?
Yeah.
That's good.
Who owns the fork? But there were, like Barry said, and I had been through it and a couple times on that first meeting, telling all the employees.
Yeah.
And I had kind of been in my mind, I'll say, preparing for what was I going to say, rolling it back to, what did private equity people say, and then what did we as sellers say, and how was it received? But then it's really the, kind of what you say almost, it somewhat matters, but it's, do you live up to it?
Sure.
So the important part was, I want to say the right thing, but I want to be able to live up to it after the fact, and not just tell them what they want to hear, that, hey, nothing's going to change, everything's going to be fine. There's going to be, confetti falling from the ceiling all the time. It's all great.
Yeah. Well, and on your side, Kelly did a heck of a job also arranging the final dinner when we disclosed everything and made sure everyone had what our technicians care about most, or his now, is we got plenty of food.
Yeah.
And Evergreen did a great job for us, and everyone was happy with that. So she did a yeoman's job kind of coordinating all that. She was involved.
She's my chief of staff. Well. She's wonderful.
Yeah. I could tell from our communication with this that she's on it. Yeah. Well, you're right, and so it takes both of you, and this is probably one of the nice parts about having that relationship and keeping it as local and as closely knit as you have, is you both can play a part in it. So you have to come in and talk as the new owner, but you have a good handle on being able to position his success well by how you communicate with it, how you treat the team afterwards, how you continue to stay engaged.
And I'm still learning.
Yeah.
So
well, we always are. It's a lifelong journey.
Yes.
It's a lifelong journey. Yeah.
Super.
Awesome. All right. I got two questions before we wrap up. One is personal. I'll save that one for the end. But the business related question is, what's next for both of you guys? What's on the, and whether it's related to SECCO or it's something completely different for you, but what's next?
You want to go first?
No, you can go first.
Okay. So I would say in the next 6 to 9 months, so that the rest of this year is really the operational excellence of SECCO and building on that. So lots of customer meetings over the first couple of months. Lots of employee meetings over the first couple of months. So really, being able to take that and then build on that, and then deliver on everything that I committed to on that in that first meeting. And we've worked out and done a lot of that, but really doing that, and along with my other two businesses, I have a couple of partners on the restoration side, minority partners, and delivering to them that this isn't going to change my overall focus. And that was the other part. You did ask the question of why not all of the businesses, and why not that? I wasn't looking for a brand new full-time day job.
Sure.
So this, like Barry said, we have really good people to run the operation. So there's a part of my time that I can spend there, and there's still a part of my time that I can spend on the restoration side and on the up-around side, but then give other people some more opportunity under me.
Yep.
So they can take on some greater responsibility.
Sounds good.
Yeah, for me, I have a couple years of working with Anthony on SECCO Electric and being there and learning my new job and helping the staff who's been with me for so long understand when it's time to talk to Anthony and versus me, and have that open dialogue, because that's one thing that they've always had with me, and it's so appreciated, is being able to Just ask the question. Don't be afraid to ask the question. You have the right guy to ask the question to. It's not going to be a hammering or a beating or a degrading or anything like that. You have someone that you can work with.
Mm.
So it wasn't a haphazard pick for sure. So other than that, I mean, I still have Pronto Plumbing, Heating, Air, and Drain. I'm pushing that, and we're right now at about half of where I want to be when we end 2025. So I've got a lot of push and growth to do there.
Yeah.
So it's just exciting. I love the trades. As Anthony said, I just love Central Pennsylvania. I mean, this is the greatest place to be.
I would agree.
So,
Awesome. All right, personal question.
uh-oh.
Yeah, I know it's going to be.
I don't really have much personal.
Oh, well, you'll. I assume you'll have an opinion on this.
Okay.
Who's the best Celtic of all time?
Who's the best Celtic?
Yeah.
Oh, gosh. That's a tough one. John Havlicek was always my favorite. Bill Russell is right there with him. I absolutely love the man as well as the player.
Yeah.
So who could play at that level and be a player coach is incredible to me. I mean, it's just incredible. And he's an incredible human being. So, yeah.
Okay. It's a good answer. It wasn't too personal. That wasn't too personal. I didn't go into the...
I did meet Sam and Casey Jones at a tennis tournament in Philadelphia.
Okay.
But, I would say John Havlicek and Bill Russell, favorites.
Okay. All right. We had the start of some discussions about the brown stuff that you see on shelves out there. If you had to choose one bourbon that you could only drink one bourbon for the rest of your life, what would it be?
So I've become a big fan of Widow Jane.
That's a good
So
one. Yeah.
Decadence, Widow Jane, that would probably be my go-to.
Okay.
Ask me in 6 months, that may
It's going to be
change.
different. Yeah, I know. Yeah.
But for the last 4 or 5 months or even longer, that has been a favorite. And now it has become wildly popular.
Yeah.
And now it is really difficult to get.
Yeah.
A year ago, it was not difficult to get.
It's funny how that stuff cycles. Yeah. That was the last one my dad and I drank. He and I started doing this thing. I found at this random men's store down in North Carolina a bourbon and cigar tasting notes book. They happen to both have 33 entries in them. So got one for my dad, got one for me. So we try once a month or so to get together and try a new bourbon and try a new cigar and then taste notes. And the last one we did was Widow Jane. So
it's a good one. There you go.
Yeah, very good. Well, this has been awesome. Thank you guys for being so open and willing to share. It's really neat to hear how this whole process went for you. Would love to have you back in a couple years post. So I think when Barry celebrates his 42nd or 43rd birthday, maybe we'll have you come back in, and you'll be a couple years fresh into running this thing. But love to have you back to hear about how it's been post all that. But thank you for coming on and sharing. It's been real fun. For anybody at home, you guys have a handful of different businesses. So instead of having you plug them all here, we'll have in the show notes links to all your different organizations, all the websites. You all can look up. You can look up SECCO. You can look up Reynolds. You can look up the IT company. You can look up Pronto. You can look up HEPA. If that's
HEPA filter sales.
HEPA,
yeah. Sure.
So you can look all those up. We'll have details in the show notes for you. But hope you guys had fun thus far.
Thank you
Everybody
very much.
at home.
It was great.
I hope you enjoyed this. Check these guys out. We'll look forward to seeing their story and how SECCO and the rest of the businesses keep developing. And we'll see you on the next episode of the Born Podcast.